Today I will be interviewing Phil Dancer. He's a home inspector from Dancer & Co. He will be answering the most commonly asked questions by buyers and sellers about the inspection process. We will also take a short walk through this beautiful newly built home at 1604 Wrightson Drive in McLean Manor, and Phil will be pointing out what to look for in a new construction. And by the way, I've included a link of this gorgeous house with pictures to take a look at, and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, Phil, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate your time. So before I'll ask you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your company, how you got into business, I just wanted to kind of make a note that your website is truly one of the best websites that I've seen in the home sector.
Thank you.
It's no coincidence, I think, that you've been featured on national and local TV and have over 400 five-star reviews online. So introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the areas you serve, what kind of services you offer, and maybe briefly of how you got into this business.
Yeah. Okay. So I got into the business almost 4 years ago now. So before I got into the home inspection business, I was actually in banking. So I started off my career as a financial planner, moved into banking, was a VP in the private banking space, but realized that wasn't my calling. So now I'm here as a home inspector. So been doing this now for a few years. So it's a lot of fun. I get to meet a lot of different types of people, which always makes every single day. It's unique. You never know what's going to end up happening. And plus, I don't have to sit behind a desk. That's always a plus. So in terms of what we do as home inspectors, we look at a home from top to bottom. We look at the big components of the home. So those are things like the roof and the foundation. As much of the electrical wiring system as we think it's safe to take a look at. We'll look at the plumbing system, take a look at the HVAC system. So that's what creates heat and creates air condition. And then we'll go through all the different rooms and just note things as we go along, and then create this really neat, unique, custom looking report for the families that we're helping.
That's something that I kind of noticed on your website, that you have cut sample reports, which customers can actually see and they know what to expect, which is very cool. This is a great segue into the first question. So the first question is going to be, what actually is the scope of a inspection? Like, what do you do in terms of when you start and what you look at and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the scope of the inspection will be determined based off of what type of standards of practice that particular inspector follows. So we follow InterNACHI standards of practice, and InterNACHI is essentially the largest home inspection association on the planet, which is actually really, really cool. They actually have the only home inspector college. It's an accredited college in the US, which is really, really neat. So there's a whole wealth of knowledge that and information, educational information that actually gets created by them and gets disseminated across the whole entire country. So there's about 30,000 members between all the different states. So that scope is taking a look at all of those major components of the home. So again, there's the roof, the plumbing, electrical wiring, HVAC, foundation, and just noting it as we go along, and then creating that report.
So a lot of times buyers especially, they are not sure what an inspection actually is. So you told us what it is. Now tell us what it isn't, what an inspector doesn't tell you in an inspection report.
So I think if you get a good inspector is always going to set proper expectations up front. So to let the families know, hey, so this is what I'm going to be doing, versus here are some of the things that we'll not be able to take a look at or address just because it's too hard to do. And those things are called limitations. And the biggest limitation that a home inspection will have is, and it's not as exciting as how HGTV tries to portray it, but we can't run through walls, we can't punch a hole through the wall. For some reason, if we see something that's interesting, because I don't think the seller would like us very much if we did. Yes. So that's the reason why a lot of us will carry fun tools with us to help us understand and figure out what's possibly happening at the home without having to be destructive there. So you'll see a lot of us have thermal imaging cameras, moisture meters, drones to be able to accomplish all the different types of work that we need to do at a house with leaving it in one piece.
So basically you have tools disposable to you to find almost like a workaround of not being able to look into the walls, right?
Right.
So let's talk about something that comes up for buyers all the time, especially when they're buying a resale home, right? When the big ticketed items like roof, like AC, they're working fine, but they're at the end of their lifespan, right? So if a buyer sees this, right, and everything is working fine, is it still a good deal, or should they walk away, or should they do?
So that's a really good question. I get asked that question every single week. So to answer your question in a different way, so a home inspection, contrary to what a lot of people believe, a home inspection actually does not have a pass or fail. It's more about, this is what the condition of the home is like. These are all the different things that we discovered in the home today. Go ahead and review it, when you have a moment, and determine if the conditions that are currently present in the home are something that you want to inherit if you decide to purchase the home. Because yes, there are always going to be aging systems in almost any home that you have, unless it's new construction. So the whole purpose of a home inspection is to determine what are the immediate needs for the home, and then also compile a to-do list of all the different things that'll have to be done over time. And there's no right or wrong. Some people could say, you know what, this is a little bit more for what I thought the home was going to be about, and they don't want to spend the amount of money that it needs in order to care for it. And other families will say, you know what, this house is amazing. I'm willing to spend to provide the resources that it needs upfront in order to be able to care for it. Let's go. Either response is completely fine, but when you're doing your due diligence and determining whether or not this house is right for you and your family, you have to get an inspection.
So basically what you're saying is that you can't really tell the future homeowner what to do or not to do, or what is good or bad for them, but you can tell them if the appliance, or let's say the roof, is in good condition and how much longer it has on average to go, and they need to make a decision if that's good for them, or they need to back out of the deal.
It's a part of the due diligence process, because it's also very tough for a home inspector to say definitively, this is how much time that something is going to have left. Because on paper, all these different systems are actually defined as, this is how long the life expectancy is going to be. But after doing thousands of homes with our team, we've discovered that just because something says that it's going to last this long on paper, sometimes it actually can last much longer than what it was projected to. And sometimes those systems actually don't hit that.
Yep.
Hit that mark. So it really just depends, letting the families know, hey, this is what we're seeing today. And I think the other big thing to also understand is, so a home inspection, it's a snapshot in time, because we can't predict the future. We can't tell you what's going to happen, but we can only report on what's happening at the house while we are here. And that's why sometimes you'll see a home inspector say at the time of the inspection, because as soon as we leave the house, something could happen. Something could happen. And at that point, it's beyond our control, because if we can't see it, we can't report it.
Yeah, that's something that I kind of learned while I started, working in real estate, that a lot of people are expecting that you're somehow a clairvoyant, which you're not. Nobody is. So you can tell them what's happening right now, and it's their decision ultimately. Talk about the home report, the home inspection report that you produce or create for your clients. So what does it include? How is it structured? What should buyers pay attention to start with? And what are like more immediate, and maybe something that we already talked about to pay attention to later, or make a list of what to fix later? So kind of talk about a structure of a report.
So really good question. So Home inspectors have the ability to use different types of reporting software. The one that we use is the most technologically advanced. It's the most modern type of report. It was created by a company called Spectora. It has the ability to be able to embed videos into the report itself, which is actually really, really neat. It also has the ability to be able to label pictures, and it's the most aesthetically pleasing software that you can physically get your hands on today. So it's really, really neat. Now we have the ability to break out any type of defect that we see into 3 different categories. I think the 2 most meaningful ones are, for us anyways, it's the blue category, which is just maintenance. And then the other one that's very meaningful is the red category, which is the safety concern category, or something that I think that the family should address immediately. Now, from a safety concern standpoint, when we create the report, it's all opinion related, and it's the opinion of the home inspector. So that's what I always encourage families: when you look at the report, let's review it together. That way we can kind of make sense for, what are the primary concerns, what are the immediate needs versus what are the things that we can kind of piecemeal down the road here. But even from a safety concern standpoint, some of the safety concerns can be fixed really, really easily, and sometimes some of the safety concerns are actually quite laughable too. So, a perfect example: I'm super clumsy. I'm probably good for tripping at least once at every single home that I'm in. So if for some reason, if I trip on something, I might call that a safety hazard, put it in the report that's a safety hazard. Everyone might just laugh and say, "Hey, Phil, I don't think that really is. You're just funny." Yeah. But I wanted you to know about it, because if I tripped on it, you might trip on it.
Somebody else's. And also different counties and different states have different requirements or safety issues that an inspector will pay attention to. For example, there are, like for sure in Maryland, in Montgomery County, you would have one type of safety requirements, and if you go in Frederick County, they'll be different. Is that correct? Or
So what you're referring to is code. So here's one of the interesting things about home inspection. So a home inspector is able to inspect in multiple cities or multiple counties, and also possibly multiple states if they're licensed, and if that state requires a license. So every jurisdiction is going to prioritize different things, and that's code. So a home inspector is not actually required or actually supposed to comment on code, because it varies from place to place. But code always goes in hand with safety. So let's say for some reason, so the tripping example, if I trip going up the steps, I'll just say, hey, the stairs or the height difference between 2 different steps, it may be too high, or it wasn't even between each step. Have a general contractor look at it. I'm not going to physically say it's in violation of code 1, because let's say hypothetically in DC, it could be in violation of code 1 where they're not even. In Montgomery County, it could be violation code 2. If I inspected down in Florida, because sometimes we get flown down to Florida, it could be in violation of code 3. So we won't actually specifically say the code. We'll say, hey, uneven stairs or uneven steps, check it out.
The last question about a older home, or a resale, as we call it, a resale home. Does a perfect home exist? If you find 30 things that are to pay attention to, for the buyers to pay attention to, does it mean that it's too many things? How many things a report is too many? Should they walk away from a home? Let's say after 30 problems, that's a bad home. We walk away from it.
Yeah. So good question. So there is no perfect home. So we'll just get that out of the way right now. Even with new construction still needs help, and it still needs attention, because it takes a village in order to be able to build a whole entire house. So you need as many eyes on your home as possible, regardless of whether it's new or if it's a resale. Now, if what is too much, or how many defects is too many, there is no number. Whatever the family decides as a comfortable amount for them, then that's what's most important. I think the most important part about a home inspection is making sure that you have a home inspector that takes their time to go through a home, because this is essentially their one chance, the family's one chance to be able to go through the home and bring certain concerns to the seller's attention, because once that period has come and gone where you can bring certain concerns to the seller's attention, it's going to be much harder to get them to it's going to be much harder to ask them to do certain things. So there is no hard and fast rule in terms of how much is too much. So
basically we're coming back to the same thing. There is no right or wrong. an inspector is not here to say this is a good house or a bad house. It's here
Correct.
to observe what's happening at this point in time and give an accurate picture to the client.
Correct. And then the family makes the determination whether or not the home makes sense for them.